Hi, and welcome everybody. I'm Jenna Cooper, your host for this Tops Parrot Food webinar presented by Rabbit Air. Today, we'll be talking about the importance of avian nutrition and the indoor environment. We will explore how to improve your parrot's food choices and provide a safe, nurturing space at home. Joining us today from Kingdom Animal Hospital in Holland, Michigan are Dr. Kendra Wolk, Hospital Director, and Maggie Hoffswell. She is a veterinary technician. Both are bird lovers and will share their expertise with us today. Welcome to you guys both, and thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Hi, Jenna. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We're so glad to be here.
So, and I failed to mention a third member of the team. So can you tell us who's behind you?
Yes, this is Willie. She is a 33-year-old African gray parrot who has been in my family her whole life, but she came here to live with us at Kingdom Animal Hospital in 2013.
Lovely. Oh, well, she
wanted to come say hi, but she's
happy up there.
She's happy up there.
She's happy. And so we know about Willie a little bit. So if you guys just take turns and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, so I am Kendra Wolk. As you said, I earned my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree at The Ohio State University in 2009. As a student, and for a couple of years after I graduated, I had the privilege of working in a small all-avian veterinary hospital. So we served mostly pet parrots, the occasional poultry. And my mentor there, Dr. Mohan, was amazing, so experienced. I learned so much from him, and I was able to bring that back here to my own practice in Holland almost 13 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And Maggie?
And I'm Maggie Hoffswell. I am a veterinary assistant and manager here at Kingdom. I have been here for 3 years, and I came to this hospital because of my special interest in birds. I wasn't always a bird person, but like a lot of people, when COVID-19 hit, I went outdoors and I fell in love with birds, and it's been a downhill spiral from there. Or I like to say uphill spiral.
Uphill, yes, a positive thing.
Absolutely. My life, my passion. And I adore talking about them and being around them. And I'm so happy to be able to work with Dr. Wul.
I've been so lucky to add Maggie to my team here as well, because to find assistants who have the kind of passion and knowledge that she's grown about birds is not that easy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's great. You guys seem like a really great team. Well, let's go ahead first and start off with nutrition. So, Dr. Wolk, what's your nutritional philosophy for parrots, and what does a proper parrot diet look like?
Well, Jenna, first of all, I feel like when we say birds or even parrots or hookbills, we're really talking about a huge variety of animal species. And so they all have really specific nuances to their ideal nutritional needs. So in a diet that I'm going to be recommending to my patients in general, I'm looking for a safe, well-balanced, and well-absorbed or assimilated diet that can be recommended to a wide variety of species as a base diet. Now, there may be additional things to recommend on top of that. I'm also really looking for that nutrition in bite. And so I often compare parrots to toddlers when I'm talking to their owners, and I basically tell them, if you offer them a bowl that has broccoli and cookies in it, they are definitely going to pick out all those tastiest bites and leave the really healthy stuff or leave certain things behind. So over time, you're going to end up with a really imbalanced diet in most of these birds, and that's definitely going to lead to some harmful medical issues.
That sounds like my dog. Well, so what can most bird owners do better when you see your clients come in? What can they do better when they're feeding their birds?
My thought is most bird owners, first of all, don't know, and they need to learn more. So they get a bird, whether it's from a breeder or a pet store, they go to the store to get bird food. And I think in most people's mind, that is seeds. And so that's issue number one, is not realizing where that in itself can lead to a diet issue. And then additionally, like you said, it's just like our dogs or ourselves, it's really easy to spoil these guys with the things that they clearly like.
Yeah. Again, like toddlers.
Yes, exactly. And yeah. Maggie talks to these owners a lot. So do you have thoughts on that as well, Maggie?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realize when they get a bird is that nutrition is such an important part of their long-term wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to the store and they see a bird on a bag of seeds and they think that is bird food. And
All birds.
that works for them, and they will feed that birds live so long. We know, these Amazons and cockatoos can get up into their 80s, and it's amazing. But over a long period of time, if they're only eating that seed mix and only picking out the things that they like, we run into big issues with their health.
Right. So to your point, getting educated about the not just birds, but the type of bird that is specifically yours. So let's talk a little bit about pellets in a daily diet. What's the best way to introduce pellets to birds?
I think that's probably the most common complaint we get from owners is they don't like it, or they won't eat it, or they only like sunflower seeds. So it's definitely something we address on a daily basis, is introducing pellets. There are just a wide variety of tips and tricks that we try to provide specific list of to owners. And I can have you just kind of list some of those, Maggie, and then I'll tell my little story about how we transitioned Willie.
So there's no exactly right way to switch to pellets. There's not a foolproof method that works for every bird. All birds are individuals, as we bird people totally know. So I unfortunately can't prescribe a way to get your bird onto pellets. But one of the most common ways is to use intervals of their original diet, and then the rest of the time they only have the pellets available. So the last thing we want to do is starve a bird when we are transitioning its diet. You really want to make sure you're watching their droppings and ideally checking their weight every day to be sure that they aren't losing over 10% of their body weight or anything like that. But you start with taking just small meals in the morning, in the middle of the day, and in the evening of 15 minutes, no more or less, where they have unlimited access to their original diet, their seed mix, or whatever is their favorite. And then the rest of the day, they only have the pellets available. Then you can slowly wean them off of their original diet, their seed mix, or whatever, until hopefully they're fully transitioned. But this can take a while. It can take weeks. It can take months. Patience is really key with that. But that, again, is just one strategy you can use. And there are plenty of tips that you can add to convince them to even try it in the first place. A lot of times a bird will look at a pellet and think, that is just not food. That is not edible. You're trying to get me to eat that. So things like crushing the pellets or moistening them, or even with fruit juice makes it a little bit more delicious and enticing, warming them up, layering them with their old food, things like that can all be tricks to try. Birds are also incredibly social creatures. So occasionally if you pretend like you're eating the pellet yourself, or you sit down with dinner and you have them with their pellets and you with your dinner and you eat together.
That's a great idea.
Add a bit of drama, a bit of enthusiasm that can really, get them interested in eating the pellets as well. And
how do you weighing your bird? Is it easy to weigh a bird? I don't remember weighing.
I usually recommend people pick up either a postage stamp scale, works really well, or a food scale. Gotcha. Something that weighs in grams is ideal. Since obviously when we're talking about birds, again, we can be talking about 20-gram canaries or our big macaws that can be 1.5 kilograms or more.
Gotcha. Okay. So as far as like hearing about nutrition, Maggie, what do you hear about from your patients about kind of the main concerns around nutrition? Like, do the birds display something that makes them concerned, or how does that conversation go?
I think a lot of the times, nearly all of the concerns that we see in our practice, at least a very large percentage of them, can be traced to poor diet long term. Even if the new owner is on a good diet and has the bird transferred over, it can have been 25 years of them eating just sunflower seeds, and we're now dealing with the repercussions of that. So I think this goes into a lot of symptoms and things that we see that can be indications of poor nutrition, like feather quality and things like that. But in terms of nutritional concerns that people have, especially when I start off the conversation about diet, what are they eating? Sometimes they will say, oh, well, I've heard about pellets. I've heard that they're good for the bird, but I just can't get my bird to eat them. And a lot of times it is a struggle, and it is a long-term investment and time it takes to get them transferred over. And people will get frustrated because their Amazon of 35 years will not touch anything that's not the pasta they made or something like that.
Wow.
And it really takes a lot for people, and they have a really hard time getting past the, oh, my bird won't even try it. So I think a lot of times opening that conversation up and saying, oh, well, you know, we have all sorts of tricks you can try, things you can do to make this happen. And it's so, so important that you do.
And what about, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you, what about fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts? What's a good balance there? Because that could be, I mean, you're talking about maybe variety and kind of a holistic approach to it, but is there a good balance with those?
That's a great question. And I think this is where some of the species specific nuances can come into play a little bit, because there are some differences in what I might recommend there. But in general, for most birds, I think ideally they're eating a nutritionally balanced pellet about 50 to 80% of their diet, depending on their species. So that's definitely a majority of their diet that we're recommending these pellets. But on top of that, healthy, low sugar vegetables, definitely a variety of those that are safe and healthy are recommended to all birds. I think there's a variation in which birds tolerate more fats, especially like in the nuts and seeds. The big macaws naturally eat more nuts in the wild, and so do better with that as a more significant portion of their diet than, say, some of our little budgies and cockatiels, first of all, that are really small. So we have to remember portion size compared to body size, but also just don't tolerate the fats as well. Amazons fall into that category, even though they're bigger birds as well, since they tend to develop fatty liver and obesity issues.
And quick question, you said low sugar vegetables. Do you have just a couple of examples there?
I think carrots and some of that are higher sugar. So staying with some leafy greens and that sort of thing. Keep that in mind with fruits as well. Certainly higher in sugar. Sugar can lead to yeast overgrowth and other issues. So just moderation for sure with that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what's really, and this is important, of course, like what's really off limits for parrots?
Yeah, it's really important when you get any pet, right, to know what's really toxic to them. And there's definitely a few things in birds. I think a lot of people hear avocado because it's kind of a strange one to think about being toxic, but it is quite toxic to birds. So it's a good one to know, because otherwise we think of them as healthy, right? Other things that we think about watching out for SARS toxin are things that you would probably commonly think are probably not very healthy for your bird, like caffeine and chocolate, toxic to birds just like they are to dogs. And then there are some plant items like the leaves and stems of tomatoes can be toxic, whereas the fruit in moderation might be okay. The nuts and seeds of fruits in general are things you want to remove when offering those to your bird.
I was going to say grapes. That's toxic for dogs. Is that something that's also off limits?
As far as I've seen in birds, grapes are well tolerated in small amounts. Caution again, their main content being sugar.
Sugar, right? No wonder I like them. Okay, so we will actually get back to some food-related questions here in just a minute, but let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's talk about the indoor environment. We all want our birds to be safe in our homes, and of course, indoor air quality is certainly one aspect that we can actually control. Dr. Wolk, how does air quality really affect the overall health of a pet?
Well, it's super important, especially for bird pets. Their respiratory systems are different than ours. They're more sensitive than ours to things like this in their environment. And as Maggie said earlier, they live a long time. So I think we see the effects of some chronic exposure to things in our air over time with parrot species more than we might with our other shorter lived pets.
Okay. So what are some of the common indoor pollutants that could actually have a negative impact?
Yeah, there are a couple of really important ones to know about, like Teflon, which is a nonstick coating on some cookware. So if it's overheated, it's extremely tragically toxic to birds, can cause some death, really. And then, just generally cigarette smokes and that sort of thing are best to completely avoid. Systems can be really sensitive to them. We even had a patient, I think he was about a 25-year-old green-winged macaw that have seen for a long time. And tragically, a few weeks ago, he presented as a sudden death patient, and owners were distraught. They didn't know why. So we were able to do an autopsy and found lung cancer in this bird. So come to discuss his history. He was in a smoking household for many years before coming to his current wonderful owners, and that had that long-lasting effect on him. So air quality can be extremely important, even if we aren't seeing current difficulty breathing or respiratory symptoms.
So how can someone make sure that their air quality at their home is the very best? Are there any tests that you can do? I assume a filter change frequently is smart for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. HEPA filters to remove pollutants from the air are ideal, making sure your area is well ventilated, and you aren't using certain sprays and chemicals and that sort of thing around your bird as much as possible is really important. And then a carbon monoxide detector is always a good idea for all of us in our home to detect things that we might not even know are there.
Yeah. And Maggie, what other steps should bird owners take to make sure that their pets are safe at home? Are there any frequently disguised dangers that are lurking around?
The home is just wrought with dangers for a little bird. Things that, you don't think about all of the time. Things like the ceiling fan can be really not good for somebody that flies around up there. Open water, like a toilet bowl or something like that, could be a danger. Doors and windows in general, they not only can get caught in them, but escaping to the outside world is just about one of the worst things, I think. So you want to be really careful of that. And windows are obviously clear a lot of the times, and you don't want any, top speed bonking or anything like that.
Yeah.
Again, candles and incense, they kind of go along with the smoking and burning and inhalation issues. You really want to avoid those as well. Even just the smallest amount of some sort of metal in the wick of a candle can be aerosolized and very toxic to a bird. So you want to be very careful with that. It's more than just the open flame concern with the candle. But again, with the Teflon, like we were saying, the kitchen in general, dangerous place for a bird. The appliances, the doors and windows, like we were saying, the sink, things like that. Speaking of sink, often there's metal involved in many different places in the home. And if you don't know what the metal is, or if it's galvanized with zinc, that can be very dangerous as well.
What about mirrors? Since we're talking about the kitchen, but let's say they go into the bathroom, how difficult are mirrors?
Mirrors are an interesting one. I think you see a lot of videos on TikTok and Instagram and things like that of birds being really silly in front of mirrors. And for the most part, they don't injure themselves on the mirror, but they can become hormonally attached to what is in the mirror. So we like to avoid having mirrors in their enclosure or where they can see all the time. But I think occasionally thinking that you're handsome in the mirror is maybe okay every once in a while.
Willie, does Willie do this? Willie, don't mean to not have you included. Does Willie, the girl, does she love mirrors?
I don't know. I think she doesn't have a ton of access to the mirror.
No, we don't give her a mirror. I have had a discussion with her since discovering she was a female 10 years ago that she is not to lay eggs or become hormonal in any way. So we're pretty careful to avoid that stimulation. And that's one of the ways we do.
I think she's looking at herself right now on the camera, to be honest. So she's posing a little bit, but that's just my take. All right. Well, so before the webinar, we asked our audience to send in some questions, and we do have a handful for you today, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for us. One question is it safe to give my birds a pinch of banana each day, or is that too much sugar, as we were just talking about?
Yeah, good question. And I guess it sort of depends what bird you're talking about. Again, like we said, there's a huge variation in species size, but bananas are fairly high sugar. And one of the things I would say is, has your bird had a history of battling things like yeast overgrowth in their crop? Because if so, that might be something to avoid altogether. If not, a pinch may be okay. Something like a tablespoon or half a banana daily, definitely too much sugar. So those are good things to kind of investigate as far as your individual bird's health. And that's where going to your avian veterinarian to have that examined. Yeast is one of the things we look at our routine.
Yeah, that seems like a big one. And what about citrus? How does that affect a parrot's crop, or a parrot's crop?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of conflicting information and debate out there about citrus, because you'll read some things that they're really high in vitamin C, and the acidity in some ways can reduce things like yeast overgrowth, especially in our lower sugar citrus like lemon, whereas the acidity itself, if given too much and too frequently, can definitely cause painful sores and ulcers in the mouth, the esophagus, and the crop, which, as you can think about having a sore in any of those areas, that's going to reduce them wanting to eat. It can get infected and cause a host of issues. So again, the small amounts infrequently of especially our lower sugar citrus may be okay for some of the larger birds especially, but really infrequently is important to avoid those ulcers.
And here's a really very interesting question, I think. So what are your thoughts on caloric density when it comes to hormone management in your birds?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because we kind of are always thinking about providing our pets with the highest nutrition, the most protein, and all of those things. But really, balance is more important, because we know things like high proteins and energy and calorie in the diet can be one of the triggers to hormonal behavior, as the body kind of sees that we have lots of energy, we should mate and reproduce, and that's something we're wanting to avoid in pet birds for the most part. And so that the balance is really important, and in birds that are showing hormonal tendencies, we might recommend reducing those protein and that energy content, replacing it with more vegetable content.
It's all about balance, even for humans.
Hormonal behavior is a huge problem that we deal with as well.
Definitely.
And diet is one of the things that we go straight to when we see a bird that's having hormonal behavior issues. There's a number of things. I think this could be a whole other webinar topic.
Yeah.
But diet and nutrition is certainly one of the things that we just go straight to and see what's going on there. Because, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Very informative. Thank you. So this next question is, what are the best foods for ringneck parrots? Parrots. Why do I keep saying parrots? Sorry. They might be parrots.
Specifically, I would recommend a similar balance to our kind of general recommendation for most pet parrots, which would be that probably 60 or 70% good high quality base pellet diet with maybe a very small amount of seeds as treats and as many different vegetables as they might accept. We do know from our experience, at least, that many of our ringneck patients do have the tendency to become hormonal and show aggression and other issues. So we keep that in mind and may reduce that protein recommendation, increase the vegetable recommendation accordingly.
Gotcha. Okay. And we were just talking about air quality. So here's a question on that. What signs should someone look for that indicate their pet is affected by poor air quality?
Yeah, I think one of the things I think of, especially in blue and gold macaws, is sometimes you'll see wheezing or breathing heavy, and that can be a symptom of asthma or allergy type condition, which does happen in birds, like I said, especially certain species. Respiratory infections are common, and you'll see sneezing, nasal discharge, things you would think about with a cold, basically. And if things become even more severe and serious. You may see them breathing really heavily, which we often note by something called tail bobbing, when they're sitting on the perch and you can see their tail going up and down. That shouldn't normally be something we see in a pet bird.
Just their tail, or?
It typically is just their tail that you can see. It's the most obvious. And there are some more subtle signs as well that can point to other health issues, but certainly we would recommend seeing your exotic animal veterinarian if your bird is acting lethargic, not singing or talking as much as usual, or not eating or drinking as they normally would. Those can all be symptoms of poor air quality or something else.
Or fluffed up feathers. Definitely by the time they're sitting on the bottom of the cage or enclosure, usually things are pretty serious and we're really concerned.
So we are just about to wrap up, and I just wanted to ask you, is there anything I haven't asked you or anything else you wanted to mention overall today?
I think we had a pretty good discussion about nutrition, and the main thing I would say is, I guess I would stress how important it is to start these birds on good nutrition early. I know Maggie sort of touched on it earlier, saying that when we see these guys and they're 25 and 35 years old and they have chronic health issues and they may be related to diet, we can correct their diet and improve their quality of life in general. But they may have really just long-lasting, irreversible changes that affect their health and their longevity. So when we start these guys on good nutrition as babies, it's one of our favorite things to get really enthusiastic new bird owners in that are really committed to doing the best and starting their birds on good nutrition right from day one with these young birds. Those are the ones that we really see the success of good diet long-term with.
Yeah. Maggie, anything you wanted to add?
I know that we've said start early, but I also just wanted to say it's never too late.
Absolutely.
I personally have an Amazon who is also 33. Willie is 33, who was on only seed diet, and both with my Amazon and with Willie, when we initially checked their blood work, we had concerns with, I believe, their liver values.
Yeah, and the cholesterol. And with Willie, I know you would spin her blood down and you could just see the amount of fat in her blood sample. And we've completely reversed that by changing her diet.
In both the blood work changes in her and in my Amazon after changing their diet, it's there in the numbers, and you can see the quality of their feathers is improved. They're beautiful. They're doing so well, and we can thank the nutrition for that a lot, I think. So don't give up. I know it can be so hard to transition birds to this healthy diet, but it can be so worth it. It can extend their lives by so much, and these animals are just amazing, and they absolutely deserve it.
Wonderful. I feel like I could talk to you guys all day, but I'm sure you have patience to see. Willie, do you need any last moment? Do you have any thoughts or anything you wanted to expound on?
Anything at all, Willie?
Oh, she's just looking at herself. Yeah.
Oh, she's just going to get crabby about it.
Okay. Well, it's her first time. It's her first time. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wolk and Maggie, for joining us today and sharing your parrot expertise. It was 100% a pleasure. And a big thanks to our presenting sponsor, Rabbit Air Purifiers. Learn more online at rabbitair.com. There's also a link on our website, topsparrotfood.com. Just check under the blog section. And of course, thank you to our audience. It was so great having you with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Jenna. We appreciate it. It's an honor to join you.
Thank you, says Willie.
Thanks, Willie.
Bye, Willie. All right. Thank you.